Hi, Astro friends. It's Melanie on the 13th of May 2026 with the Astro Weather going until the 19th of May, which will be literally the last day of Taurus this year. So, this is the last week of Taurus. On the 20th, the Sun enters Gemini. And the most important event, of course, will be the end of Taurus new moon in 3 days on May 16th at 1:01 p.m. Pacific Daylight Savings Time, which is in fact in Pacific Standard Time, so energetically it's high noon. And I'll show you the chart to prove it. So here is the chart for the new moon, and the sun and moon as a new moon are right above here on the MC, so on the energetic noon point. And we are having not just a new moon, not just a cuspy new moon from Taurus to Gemini, but also Mercury connected with the new moon, end of Taurus, and Uranus here at the very beginning of Gemini. And we're also having a T-square to the nodal axis with the south node in early Virgo, the north node in early Pisces. A lot of mutable energy that way. Oh, Taurus is still fixed. It's a mix, but the shift is going towards mutable, which is Gemini. But we have this this concentration here, this cuspy concentration. We're definitely going to talk about it. And the end of Taurus, new moon in transition to Gemini catalyzes, in fact, Uranus fully into Gemini. The shift already happened on April 25th, but now just at the very end of Taurus, the new moon escorts Uranus fully out of Taurus into Gemini. And this is the cusp that I call the voice point. So it's also an energy where nature speaks or our body speaks, right? Or also where we need to express and speak to and from our values, right? It's like that the earth shifts into air, the physical and material world turns into the intellectual, mental world, the first air sign after the first earth sign. And this is a shift that is particularly punctured by Uranus now, because Uranus is a slow-moving planet and has now taken the full shift into Gemini, as I said, and will be in Gemini for 7 years. While the new moon, end of Taurus, yes, it's a cyclical yearly event, but it's also very significantly positioned right in conjunction with Uranus. What does all this mean? And how does the nodal axis come into play as well? So let's take a look. And there's few other factors as well. As I said, it's very busy again. So we are having, of course, another renewal event with that new moon, and of course, always an invitation to align with that through ceremony, through intentional conception, because it's really a conception energy. In other words, to be active about it, but also be receptive about it. So what are we receiving at this time of the month, and also what are we initiating actively? And end of Taurus has a Virgo undertone, so we are now dealing with, again, with our values and what is in alignment with our values, what keeps us well, healthy, and what keeps our world functional rather than making it dysfunctional. So that is very apropos. End of Taurus, the Virgo undertone, but the Taurus side also has to do again with values and also with slowing down, with grounding the energy, with applying common sense is also apropos Virgo Taurus, and then to voice that or also to air that, so to say, to free it, to come out of our maybe stuck position, come out of the closet and let the world know, and giving our values and our common sense a voice. So it's also about liberating change, right? Uranus is about liberation, is about breakthrough, and coming out of comfort zones, coming out of habits, coming out of stuck patterns from the Taurus side. So all of this is coming up now, and especially since Mercury, the ruler of Gemini, is also together with the new moon here, right? And Mercury is now fastest in its cycle um, between the retro phases, right? So it's furthest away from the last and the next retro phase, which happened in Pisces and will happen in Cancer again. So now it's the fastest moving um, in its cycle, and the connection with the sun to sanction that and to emphasize that will be tomorrow on the 14th. That is called the superior conjunction between the sun and Mercury. And so Mercury will now also pass the sun. So this is like always like fair warning. And especially as Mercury passes the sun, the mind is leading again, and even going into Gemini on the 17th, the day after the Taurus new moon. So that's also where energy shifts more into Gemini with Mercury in its own sign. So the mind can be clearer, freer, and also the alchemist, as I like to say about Gemini, bringing different components together, connecting the dots, information, thoughts, discussions, and all of that can really help us with moving things forward more quickly. It's an excellent time, of course, for writing, for discussions with people, for learning of all kinds. And the big event for Mercury will be, of course, right at the beginning when Mercury meets and passes Uranus, which will be also on the same day on May 17th. And so that can be also another indicator, marker for a shift in consciousness and in mental, intellectual awareness, liberating, right? So Uranus uh, in Gemini, being the revolutionary alchemist. So maybe literally there are talks about revolution. How can we revolutionize our minds, set ourselves free through information, through new thoughts, through a spiritual awakening, which is also Uranus. And yeah, so and Uranus will then also activate that air trine. Sorry, Mercury will activate that air trine that Uranus is building up with Pluto in early Aquarius. And Aquarius is also ruled by Uranus, so there's an inner link. This will be a very auspicious energy from Pluto in early Aquarius, uh, activated by Uranus in early Gemini, and then by Mercury already anticipated next week from the 18th, pretty much on the, let me just take a quick look, on the 19th actually. So what am I talking about? This is about awareness and freedom, about the shifts that we are going into a new era, right? So how can that new era be actually one of humanity, of the human family, rather than of control systems of all sorts, including technology with Pluto and Aquarius? So how can humanity and community come together? So that's where also communication comes in, and planting seeds in that regard. Once again, with the new moon. Then we have the square, the T-square with the nodal axis, right? So we're having the south node now in early Virgo, having gone retrograde as the south node and the north node typically always do, and now reach the early part of Virgo which it will leave for Leo on August 19th. So in 3 months. So, and conversely, the North Node is in early Pisces and will go into Aquarius from August 19th on. So now this, at the very end of this phase, which has been taken since end of January 2025, is being activated. What does this mean? The South Node in Virgo shows us where we might have a strong tendency to go to very strongly, as I said, and yet lose energy over it. What does that mean? So a shadow of Virgo, especially from early Virgo, is things are getting very complicated, very heavy, and difficult, and we try to fix it. So there's lots of problems going on in the world, and that also can make us feel heavy, depressed, and needing to, yeah, again, Virgo is about economy, needing to save money because everything is getting more expensive and things are tight and it gets very serious, right? And we're very in a problem mode. We're really energetically in a mode of problems and difficulties. And then in as the antidote, we have early Pisces as an incentive. This is where we need to fill up our cup by changing the vibration, going into a different energy field where things feel more in flow, where there is the solution rather than more problems, and where there is connection. This is a big factor with Pisces. Connection, good vibrations, flow, and ease. And that can mean stepping away from our problematic mind and desk and the to-dos from the Virgo side, and taking time out, which is very Pisces, right? And being by the water, literally, and being in connection, being in spiritual connection, being connection with nature, with our loved ones, with life. And so this new moon and Uranus also, which will square the nodal axis, in fact, exactly on June 20th, but this new moon already brings it out, will activate all this, right? What does that mean? So again, renewal and liberation, paradigm shifts, new ways of thinking, new ways of learning, and also unlearning, doing things the hard way and the complicated way, and being in better flow and in better energy. Then what else is going on right with the new moon? In fact, Mars, now still barely at the very end of Aries, will pass Aries, Eris, and Chiron. And that will be also the fact of May 16th, the day of the new moon. So here you have it. This is Mars, Chiron, end of Aries. And so Mars will now pass Chiron and prepare to go into Taurus from the 18th on. But at the very end, this is again warrior spirit, action, and coming from the end of Aries, Sagittarius undertone with an inspiring and with a greater yes. All right, what is it that we want rather than what do we fight, and what are we in competition with, at war with? More wars bring more wounds. Clearly, we know enough about that by now. Chiron in Aries since 2019, and at its very end, or last year, we had yet another layer, having yet another layer of wars in the Middle East. So Mars saying, okay, what do we want, and also how can that lead to early Taurus settling point? So settling the wars, the conflicts, wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be a great, purpose and action? So, and in our own life, how can we also transcend and move beyond all this all this activity, all this battling that we might have engaged in, especially with so much Aries energy in April and early May here with Mars still. And so understand how much that is wounding, how much that can bring up early wounds, how much we need to fight, do we really need to, and can we actually turn our energy from the Mars side towards more enjoyment, which is Mars in Taurus. So Mars enters Taurus on the 18th and will be in Taurus until June, let me just verify, June 28th. Yes. So this is a wonderful end of spring, early summer energy to slow down, to enjoy life in spring, to really pursue our values, what brings us joy, where we can be at peace and in a more comfortable place, right? So Taurus brings comfort, stability, and joy. And yeah, so what do we want in that regard, and how can we move forward with that? Then we have also on the 18th, Venus will also make a move from Gemini to Cancer, where she'll be until June 13th. So you can see that in the chart also. Venus is now, and with the new moon at the very end of Gemini, then going into Cancer, where she will eventually meet Jupiter. Yeah. So, and that shift, I call that cusp actually the nesting point. So she's been flying around, just being out and about. In other words, our interests, our attractions have been maybe a little scattered, but definitely multifaceted. And we're bringing all of that, what we gathered, it's like a gathering energy, right? Nesting also into our nest, into our home. This would be a wonderful time actually until mid-June to bring more love into your home and into your family, into your place of belonging, and also making your home more beautiful. Venus in Cancer, beautifying energy and loving energy, nesting energy, energy like loving energy together with children, their own creativity, of course, as well. So, loving, gentleness, and care is the idea. And what else do we have this week? Let me just look at my cheat sheet here. We have Sun, Mercury, we have the new moon, Mars and Chiron, and we have, yes, Mercury entered Gemini, I talked about that, and Mars and Venus. Okay, yeah, that's it. So, yeah, that was actually much quicker than I thought. Maybe Mercury into Gemini already helped me with, going through these different changes very swiftly here with you. And how about now the last decade of Taurus? Yeah, I already talked about that too. Has a Virgo undertone. Again, working with what we value and enjoy and what brings us health, wellness, alignment. And now, how about the moon this week? So we have currently the moon in Aries. Yes, that of course also helps with being swift and direct. So Aries moon started yesterday evening, the 11th, and after a really long, sorry, the 12th, after a really long void phase of 14 hours, yesterday all day, maybe you remember, floating around, and we got our head out of the water, as one of my clients said at some point, very apropos, Aries after Pisces. And the moon passed Neptune, which could have been also still a little bit of a fuzzy vibe there. But the moon now in Aries today, 13th, has passed Saturn. And that is brings real clarity, brings directness. I had a wonderful conversation with an Aries Sun friend in Germany, and that was very very direct, in a good way, in a clear way, seeing one another, facing one another, supporting one another, being present with one another. And with Saturn, typically there are Saturn now in Aries since mid-February for the next 2 years and such, helps us see the causes and effects, and especially like it's karmic in a way, right? So seeing the effects of when we can be authentic, right? Again, Aries, and direct and fast in a way too, right? And when there are challenges, what that means, what is the lesson here, or what isn't working, right? What do we need to leave behind, because Saturn also says less is more, right? And what works best. Saturn actually wants to improve our life, in this case with Aries. Also, Saturn says no to war, right? So I saw a sign on Saturday just down the road saying, war is wrong. Exactly. That is Saturn in Aries. And the question then is also, where do wars start? So we could, where does conflict start? Competition, conflict, battling. So we can look at the position of early Aries in our charts. And now Saturn's actually almost going towards mid-Aries. Yeah, it's past the 10-degree mark. And so that can give us clues in our own lives where where our work is, right, in that regard. And the work, of course, typically has to do with completion, with Saturn, and with the work, right? And with growing up, which is Saturn, right? So maturity, and also leaving old karma behind, leaving old patterns behind. And then in doing so, contributing also to a world where there is less conflict and war, right? But not in a fake way, not in a bypass way, in a real way, right? And Saturn holds us accountable as usual. Then, so as I said, the moon passed Saturn today, the 13th. And tomorrow, the moon will go into Taurus in the evening, 7:31 p.m., getting ready for the new moon. So it will be a dark moon, dark before new, on in Taurus, after Aries, which is more dynamic, and the Taurus moon is slowing things down again. But it's also a preparation, right? So it's a preparation for this renewal, as I said, with the Taurus new moon, that has to do with finding our voice, being clear in our values without getting stuck and stubborn, right? And finding our ground again in so many levels. Of course, nature helps. And the moon will be in Taurus then until the 16th, the day of the new moon, in the evening, 6:02 p.m., when she enters Gemini. So I already mentioned the new moon will be at 1:01 p.m., right at real noon, right? And in the evening, the moon will then enter Gemini and pass Uranus, as all celestial bodies and planets do. When they enter Gemini, they have to get through Uranus. So this is again the surprise factor, the liberating factor, the paradigm shifting factor, in this case with the moon, in other words, with our emotions. And it's really a renewal energy that way. So that whole day, the 16th, with the new moon, and then Mars having passed Chiron, and the moon entering Gemini and meeting Uranus, a very renewing energy, as you can imagine. And it's also a lightness coming with that renewal, right? This is Gemini. And then the moon enters, will be all day the 17th in Gemini. And I'm just thinking of a friend of mine whose birthday will be on the 17th, and he was born under the new moon in Gemini. So sun and moon When that happens, not very often on our birthday, we have what's called a solar lunar return. So it's not just the sun has a solar return, also the moon has its monthly lunar return. So the lunar birthday of the month coincides in this case with the solar birthday of the year. A very special renewal mirroring the combination, the lunar phase that you were born with. Very significant. And we have on the 18th, which is here in Victoria, celebrated as Victoria Day, Queen Victoria, the moon in Gemini, welcoming Mars into Taurus and Venus into Cancer, before the moon, also enters Cancer in the evening of the 18th, nesting point emotionally, especially coming back from all the mental energy that would have been activated on the weekend, coming to the emotional side again, right? Finding our home, finding our belonging, coming into our own retreat and a space where we feel our needs and feelings are being met and we can nurture and be nurtured. So Cancer energy, especially new moon, young moon, freshly after the new moon with Cancer, connecting with Jupiter, which will be the case on the 20th, actually in the morning. So a really beautiful, also beautiful sight after sunset. We can see not just the freshly waxing moon, but the moon with Jupiter. Very auspicious energy on the 20th for renewal when it comes to home, belonging, family, but also from a liberated place, right? Uranus came with a new moon. And yeah, that's it for the astro weather this week. I wish you a beautiful week. It's actually quite auspicious energy all in all. And hope to see you in real life at some point again. Or you can find me again on this channel. And if you're interested in the newsletter for the new moon, every new moon and full moon, I send out an email newsletter to subscribers, very comprehensive, also touching on other shifts and changes that come with the new moon or interface from the new moon to the full moon, vice versa. You're most welcome. Just send me a message and I put you on a subscriber list. Easier than finding the subscribe button and all that. Yeah, and so yeah, where else can you find me? Yeah, of course, the blogs, the blog articles. They break down different shifts, so they're not as overreaching as from new moon to full moon, but it's addressing shifts in the celestial system. So in other words, when the Mercury enters Gemini, when Venus enters Cancer, when Mars enters Taurus, there will be articles specifically for that, especially because that's also for everybody who has planetary energy and zodiac energy activated and have transits from those planets. They'll be mostly interested in those transits. And that was a bit complicated way of expressing it, right? So if it affects you specifically, you'd be interested in that. And blog, Facebook page, of course, this YouTube channel, Instagram. You can find me on many channels, and I would love to see you in real life as well. If you want to come to a session, they can be conducted in person or online, of course. So wishing you a beautiful week and yeah, all the best for this new moon. Cheers.